We're live once again from Parliament Buildings here in Georgetown, day 5 of the 2014 budget debate. Nia Suban here with my colleagues Indira Badal and Dario McCullman. And basically, a fairly interesting day, dramatic day, some may want to say, Dario, Indira.
I think indeed, Dario, we've seen a number of developments happening, unfolding in the National Assembly today. We had some very good presentations, some recommendations. It started off very nicely, very sober. What Guyanese would have expected, the opposition making recommendations for improvement in the 2014 national budget. Some of them lauded the government for some of the initiatives made. But after the break this afternoon, we saw some very interesting developments unfolding.
If I can then take a moment to update our viewers what's happening right now. Right now, the debate has been suspended. The Speaker, the Honorable Speaker, is meeting with the Chief Whips of both the People's Progressive Party and that of APNUN. Why that is happening is that a few moments ago, the Honorable Minister of Education was about to make her presentation, and there was thumping of the desk to drown out her voice. So basically, a manner of trying to make her not speak. And she tried again, the same thing continued, and I think there was an objection, so now they're meeting to see the way forward on that. Dario.
Clearly a dramatic development. I thought that this matter had been dealt with and it was behind us. When the Speaker reviewed the Hansard and determined that he had overreacted in placing a strong ban on Minister Manik Chan in not allowing her to present. And he came subsequently and declared that he had overreacted, and in fact he was lifting that ban, and the minister will be allowed to make her presentation. Lo and behold, this evening, when she is preparing to make that presentation, the combined opposition is clearly protesting at her being allowed to make that presentation. So clearly, the combined opposition has not supported the Speaker's decision to allow Honorable Manik Chan to present, and they are venting that opposition to his decision.
And as we speak, we are waiting to go live as soon as the Speaker is back in. Is he back in now? Okay, so we are waiting. That's a live picture from Parliament Buildings, from the chambers. Or this was earlier?
This is in fact the protest. We can see the banging.
Okay.
The problem. All members, could we have order to allow the minister to speak, please, to address the House?
Dario, you were so right. That was a shot.
That's exactly what caused
Yeah.
the Speaker to suspend the
I
sitting.
think that was the second time for the evening after the 5 o'clock break that the House was suspended. We had earlier suspension lasting for, I think,
before we go there, just to inform our viewers what I was going to say earlier. We are waiting on the Speaker to come back into the chamber, and when he does so, we will go live to bring you exactly his ruling as it relates to what happened earlier pertaining to the banging of the desk and the prevention of Minister Manik Chan from speaking. So we could talk about what happened just before that.
And I would imagine we can presume that when the Speaker returns, if the situation persists, that he will have no other choice but to adjourn the sitting.
I think here we need to remind ourselves that the National Assembly is governed by standing orders, and every parliamentarian has to abide by those rulings. Like earlier this evening, just before the second bit of drama in the National Assembly. I'm sure the persons out there are saying the drama in the National Assembly. This one dealt with Standing Order 416 that talks about the ability to question. And we would have seen a precedent set earlier, and perhaps for a little clarification, the Assembly was adjourned to facilitate.
Or from what we know happened was that when Member of Parliament from APNU, Mr. Rene Morian, was speaking, he made some assertions that a minister went to Linden with a black bag and said, to quote, "Don't share it out until I leave," implying that it could have been money and was there like if you want to buy stuff or buy people. He was asked to name the minister. He was asked to name exactly who was he referring to, and there was a ruling that he could the question could not have been asked based on, as you mentioned, a precedence that happened earlier, maybe yesterday, where there was a ruling that you could not ask a question where that was. And then as Member of Parliament Odinga Lubumba, when he was speaking, he made certain statements, and it was interpreted. It was interpreted as or to suggest that it was a statement that was disparaging in some way to the leader of the opposition as it relates to Gaisuku, and probably could have been interpreted as a racist comment. And Mr. Granger stood up to ask Mr. Lumumba a question, and apparently that was allowed. And then there was objections from the other side because apparently it wasn't consistent, and there was an adjournment of the sitting because by then the deputy speaker, by then it was the deputy speaker, the Honorable Mr. Bazin Williams, that was presiding over the sitting at that time because the speaker, Mr. Raphael Trotman, had stepped out, and he ruled that that Mr. Lubumba will have to withdraw the statement and or he wouldn't be continue to speak. So they adjourned, and that took a little while, and then they went back in, and Mr. Basil Williams allowed Mr. Odinga to continue his presentation. But because his presentation was interrupted while he was in Parliament, his presentation was recorded a few moments ago, and sometime later down, NCN will bring the entire presentation to viewers.
Dario, I know.
I know I said a lot there.
It's interesting because at this stage of the of budget discussions, because it starts with the budget reading, we have the debates, and then we have further debates over the estimates. It's not necessarily this heated. There are not so many interruptions, and many Guyanese, we are all looking forward for an amicable solution. We're all hoping that the politicians will work together to move the country forward. But tonight seems to be so eventful.
Well, it's ironic because it's Friday afternoon or Friday evening. You'd expect, things a bit more smooth. So two interruptions between 6 hours and the current time over the last 2 hours or so.
But I'll tell you what, despite the...
two suspensions, I must say.
Despite the activities that unfolded the latter part of the evening, there were some very interesting presentations this afternoon, Dario.
It's why I'm so perplexed now, because I thought... a few days since the presentation started, I was somewhat intrigued by the sober manner, the very respectful manner in which the debate was proceeding. We were seeing not outright condemnations as we thought would happen, coming from some members of the opposition, while all they seemingly came to do was to condemn. There were so many of them who were lauding programs of the government, and it was very encouraging. In fact, it seemed as though all that was anticipated may not very well take place in terms of the animosity that we saw last year. And now this afternoon, with all of this drama, I'm now perplexed. I don't know, I'm thrown off by the fact that I'm
Dario, but if we were to look at Niaz, if we were to look at some of the presentations this evening, early in the afternoon, before the afternoon break at 5 o'clock, we heard from APNU's Member of Parliament, the Honorable Sidney Alicock, and he was very constructive in his presentation. He lauded the government for their interventions in Region 9. He explained some of the challenges persons would have reported, and he also gave recommendations for improvement. On the other hand, we heard from the Honorable Robert Persaud, Minister of Natural Resources, and he also showed how the government is working to improve the quality of life and to diversify the economy, while at the same time he called for the support of the opposition, which was very good.
But the first speaker for the afternoon was afternoon member of Parliament, Mr. John Adams, and among other things, he said basically there was a clueless manner in which the government is managing the rice industry, and we heard Dr. Ramsamy last evening, and we've heard even before all of that, the kind of records that were broken in 2013 as it relates to rice production, surpassing over 500,000 tons for the first time, and the kind of expansions that we would have seen across the country as it relates to rice. So one tends to wonder as to what would have prompted him to make this kind of remark, knowing the kind of successes we would have seen in the rice industry over the years. But coming back to Minister Persaud, I like what he said at the opening, and I think we all shared this at the beginning, when he said there's a budget of equity for transforming the country and keeping the economy resilient, preparing and positioning Guyana for the future. And I thought that really summed it up.
Because in fact, what has happened over the past few years, as Minister of Agriculture quite eloquently dealt with yesterday, the government has been able to successfully diversify the Guyanese economy beyond the traditional areas of focus, economic focus. You have the mining industry flourishing and generating so much revenue. You have entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized businesses all over the country generating jobs, generating revenue like never before. So many new sectors, ICT, so many sectors have been nurtured into a position where they can now take on a responsibility of their own to carry the economy. We heard of the figures of the percentages to GDP that some of these new sectors have contributed. And clearly, as we highlighted in terms of mining, the economy is now being cushioned in several areas, even as sugar is going through some challenges.
And he also spoke about bauxite, because natural resources and bauxite has been the traditional one that you spoke about, and the way the economy has been diversified over the years. Let's go to a clip on what he said about the bauxite industry.
And again, Mr. Speaker, if we look at the focus of this budget, it is about ensuring equity, it is about ensuring fairness, and it is about ensuring that all the people of Guyana, if they live in the Rupununi, if they live in Linden, if they live in Parika, if they live in Georgetown, if they live in the East Coast, if they live in West Berbice, if they live in Kwakwani, if they live in New Amsterdam, Port Morant, wherever they live in Skeldon, Oriala, Siparuta, wherever they live, Mr. Speaker, there is something for them in this 2014 budget. It is about equity, it is about fairness, it is about opportunities for all.
In fact, from the budget presentations, we can see, based on what Minister Robert Persaud highlighted there, from the budget presentations, we saw that in 2013, $17.5 million worth of investment was made by BOSAI into the bauxite industry. And then BCGI is now slated to cap off a total investment of $20 million in bauxite. So there's clearly an upsurge in the fortunes of bauxite.
And you also mentioned it's no longer a monopoly on the economy, and basically the bauxite industry is poised for expansion in terms of job creation. Also, he lauded the small and medium-scale miners for their hard work, and of course, we saw the numbers over the previous years, how that industry has grown, and the kind of records also that it achieved as a result of the hard work and dedication of the small and medium-scale miners.
I think it's time for us to take an excerpt from his presentation.
As we await that clip to be played, as we told you earlier, we are standing by to go live in the chambers of the National Assembly. There is a recess right now.
In fact, I'll be happy if we can see another live shot to see what's happening in the chamber. The Speaker is not yet back in his chair. He has not returned because he's consulting with the chief whips of the two sides to determine how to move forward, given the continued protests at Minister Manik Chan making her presentation.
So we are waiting to go live. In the meantime, we were talking about the presentation of the Honorable Minister Robert Persaud, Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment, and what he said about the small and medium-scale miners.
We have resurrected bauxite industry. And we have brought communities that were abandoned. Communities, be it in Region 10, in Linden, Aichuni, or up the Berbice River, Kokwani, Araima, Hururu. We have brought where there was a feeling of hopelessness when persons, after the devastation that came about to the closure of bauxite then, we revived hope. And we were able to attract foreign investment and restarted and rejuvenated the bauxite industries, the Linden bauxite as well as the Berbice River bauxite.
Very interesting, Dario, and we'd like to welcome the Honorable Leslie Ramsamy, Minister of Agriculture. Dario, you know today we had this discussion. We heard from the Honorable Sidney Ali Cork talking about the Santa Fe farm in Region 9, one of the biggest developments there in terms of agriculture. Also, we heard APNU's Member of Parliament, the Honorable Mr. Adams, talking about the rice industry. Dario, I know you have quite a lot of questions.
Joining us, and I did say publicly that your presentation each year is one that I personally look forward to. I really appreciate the way you're able to stir the Guyanese people into seeing that macro vision of a country. And you always place it in the context of a story. You see a country that tells a story of moving from point A and is at point B, and we can clearly see the trajectory that we're going to get to point Z along a progressive, successful line. And
I really think that's how
my
people should
appreciation
look
for your
at a government and at a country, because we all have dreams. We all know where we want to be. We all know the country that we want to live in. And so the way I have always approached it when I was a boy, going to school, and now as a politician and a part of the government, is where is my country going to be in 2020? And what is the country that I want to see in 2020 or 2030? And therefore, when I judge my government, when I was not in government, is how is this government taking us along that path?
Let me ask you the question here quickly. $500 million for the rice farmers. Persons out there are saying the rice industry is very successful. That's why some frowned when we heard the Honorable Mr. Adams from APNU referring to the presentation as clueless. Now, how will $500 million further develop the industry? What will this money be used for?
Well, I hear words like handouts and so for the rice industry. The fact of the matter is that we have built the rice industry. We have built the rice industry. We are supporting bauxite. We're supporting sugar. We're supporting other industries, ICT, for example, the service industry, etc. What we're doing with rice right now is, one, we have to look for more export for the market. So we need money to go out there and build a market. Two, we have to increase yield so our cost of production is reduced. Because the problem right now is that Guyana is used to only sending its rice and paddy to premium markets where you get higher prices. But as our production increase, we have to also compete at markets where the prices are lower. And one of the things we have to do, therefore, is lower our cost of production so that when we enter those markets, we are still maintaining our profit margin. So, for example, we will buy levelers. These are
You're going to mechanize the industry.
It's already a lot mechanized, but we are going to mechanize it more. See, the small farmers can't afford certain things, like the big farmers.
Yes.
One is the laser levelers, and that's what we're going to be buying, things like that, to put in the industry for the small farmers to use without a cost.
We
In fact,
heard the Honorable Siraj from the government side talking about government is willing to work with the RPA to make some investment in Region 2. Tell us more about that, if it is in this year's plan.
We have included in the $500 million some money to buy more dryers so that so that farmers do not have to go by the roadside, and we could increase our drying capacity. We're talking about also storage, because you as a farmer, if you have a particular price being offered to you and you're not satisfied, you could actually store your paddy away until you have a better price. That's the kind of thing we want to do with our farmers. And actually, and I'm glad I get this chance, because what we have discovered is some millers are giving farmers fertilizer, fuel, etc. But in return, they force the farmer to bring their paddy to their mill at whatever price. And that's a disadvantage. These are some of the things we want to do so that we
You'd like to
facilitate
create a
the
level
farmers.
playing
A level
field.
playing field between the millers and the farmers, because it's one industry.
And perhaps you're empowering the farmer more.
We are empowering the farmers so that the whole industry is empowered to compete at the international level with countries like Thailand, India, Vietnam, etc.
And in terms of
huge producers.
increasing that competitiveness, we recently, just last week, saw the completion and handing over of reports from the Energy and Research Institute of India, who just completed an audit of the productive sector, rice, sugar, sawmilling, to see ways in which energy efficiency could be achieved. This was clearly one of the projects that was close to your heart.
Yes, in fact, when you look at rice, we have the rice husk that is presently an environmental issue. But we could use that husk to reduce energy cost for the miller, which is a substantial cost. So their cost of production goes down, but you entirely remove the environmental problem. In doing something that will be worthy for the miller, it will also solve an environmental problem. And therefore, if the miller's cost is lower, he can afford to pay the farmers more.
Let's talk about this. You talked about the environment, which is very important. Congratulations. Your ministry, the government worked for the achievement of the MDGs in food security. Mega Farm, Santa Fe, Region 9, we all know about. But in Mr. Ali Cox's presentation, he voiced some concern. And what are your response to those concerns?
Well, I'm surprised that Mr. Ali Cox did, because Mr. Ali Cox asked that question in Parliament, and I answered it in writing. The fact is that the fertilizers and pesticides used in Santa Fe, at Santa Fe, are exactly the same ones that we use on the coast. And the amount used is exactly the same. Mr. Ali Cox today went one step further by saying their concern is because sometimes when the rain falls and the whole place flood, you will then take all of the pesticides and so around to the people. But this is not so at all, because one, the pesticides itself is short-lived, and once applied, become fixed into the soil, can't be floating around, and then within days it disappears.
So there's no validity to the
so there's
concern
no
that
validity in
the
that.
ecosystems in the area will be affected, given the fact that they suffer from a lot of flooding in the area. And so?
The fertilizers, the nitrogen, urea, is fixed in the soil. The thing that to note is Guyana, because of our agreements, the Stockholm, Montreal Protocol, the Dubai Declaration, we have banned all of those pesticides and fertilizers that have potential injury to people. So Guyana don't use
But
those.
let's just clarify a point. We all are of the opinion Santa Fe is a modern farm. It is using modern technology. Is
And
that true?
creating, it's a modern farm. It uses all of the standards, international standards, and it also creates employment for people and so. And let me just make this point. Region 9 is almost contiguous with Roraima. And in Roraima, they have developed their agriculture using some of the same technology, and they've done it for decades. without hurting their people.
Minister, I hope you don't mind, but it would seem that MP Alikok has agreed to join the conversation.
Yes.
Would you mind if he joins us to continue this discussion?
I welcome Mr. Alikok.
Okay.
I believe while we wait on Mr. Alikok, yes, very smilingly he comes.
We're not at all attempting to start a sub-debate at this National Assembly, this August House.
But I want to ask the question. Welcome, Mr. Alikok. I think I'm going to
Please,
make some way for you. Good evening to you, and how are you this evening?
Fine, I'm okay. Thank you so much.
And Sydney, I could tell them that they didn't have to separate us because we aren't going to fight.
But perhaps maybe we'll just set the stage. Okay. We'll have them together, Dario. And it's very good to see our parliamentarians working together and showing the brotherly love. Mr. Alikok, I know you made some comments. You have discussed some issues on about
His
Region 9. And I think
him.
we're hearing the voice of UpNews Chief Whip Amna Ali in the background calling out to Mr. Alikok. But quickly, Mr. Alikok, if you have to go, let's hear what are some of your primary concerns of Region 9. And we have the Minister of Agriculture. I know your big contention, Santa Fe Farm.
Yes, Santa Fe's farm. The worry is there is this big project that is there. The worry for us is about the chemicals, as I said. Any new development brings a sense of suspicion. And we have over on the other side experiences that were had by our brothers and sisters on the other side, which caused lives of human beings, caused life of animals, the fishes, and a standoff between the developers and the communities. Because of that, there is this concern. We would not like to find ourselves in the same situation, and that is why the information should be shared. We need information so that it could keep us as comfortable as possible, because we would want to be part of the whole process of development and not to be left aside. So the more information that you get, the better for us. The more opportunity for discussion, the more opportunity to be able to have part and parcel of the whole process of understanding what is happening would be better for us.
Sounds fair enough, Minister. Consultation, inclusive approaches to development.
I think Mr. Alikok is right. And in fact, a lot of discussion occurred in Region 9 before they started. And Mr. Alikok, you know some of the people who led the consultation and so, some of your relatives.
Yeah.
And I know Mr. Alikok asked a couple weeks ago some of the pertinent questions that was answered in writing. I can assure Mr. Alikok and the whole of Guyana, particularly our brothers and sisters in Region 9, that we also have those concerns. And not just there, everywhere that we do agriculture. And Guyana has learned from other countries. That is why Guyana is one of the countries way ahead of other countries when it comes to how we handle pesticides and toxic chemicals. We established the Pesticide and Toxic Chemical Board. We follow all of the international rules. The Dubai Declaration, Rotterdam Convention, Stockholm Convention, Montreal Convention. Guyana was the first of the CARICOM countries and one of the first of the developing countries that was compliant with all of the international environmental rules when it comes to pesticides and toxic chemicals. We banned all of those chemicals that have been suggested. And indeed, one of our problems right now is that because we have banned some of these chemicals, when we send our product to other countries, they demand that we fumigate, for example, with certain of these chemicals that we have banned. Methyl bromide is an example. When we send our products to other countries, they want us to fumigate. But Guyana banned it because that's one of the chemicals. So I think the engagement must be continuous. I think that even though consultations were done, reports were written, etc., we should ensure that we do it continually because you will always have new things coming up.
And in light of the concerns expressed by MP Alcock,
Right.
Minister, I would imagine that you would want to continue those consultations.
And in fact, I've spoken, that's how I know who were the consultants and advisors and so on. I have spoken with Santa Fe, and they have agreed that they will hold several community meetings again on this matter. Because I think people must be comfortable. It's a good thing. I think all of us agree that Santa Fe is good for Guyana, good for Region 9. But we must also make sure that something good does not become a reason for anxiety and concern. And so where it exists, we should allay them.
MP Alcock, I believe that sentiment is shared in your region, that is indeed a good initiative, a good intervention to have such a mega investment in your region that creates opportunities.
Yes, to a certain extent. The only worry is the rice, as I said, and rice in a fragile frontier, it means that you have to keep continuously fertilizing the area. We don't know what it will eventually have, and we don't want to have something that is going to hurt us later on. So that is our concern. We have the cattle, the cassava, and all these things that are there, and we welcome that part of the business. We would also like to see more cattle in the place, more small livestock, aquaculture, and the production of cassava as a main product of the Rupununi.
And in fact, that's what Santa Fe is. Rice
Yes,
will only
yes.
be a small
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of it.
We would love to have this discussion continue, but we are looking over our shoulders. We're seeing lots of movement in the corridors. We highlighted earlier that the sitting has been suspended as the speaker confers with the chief whip on the continued protestation at the presentation by Honorable Minister Manik Chan. And there seems to be lots of developments in the corridors, and we want to get in on some of the drama. So we're going to try to bring this to a close. But just before you go, MP Alcock, I was very pleasantly surprised by your presentation today. In fact, it seemed to be one of the more amiable presentations in terms of lauding. You listed in bulleted points the transformational projects that had been instituted by the government in your area and offered little critique except for Santa Fe and some other concerns that you raised. Is there an indication that you'll be prepared to support some of these projects when they come up for voting this time around? Because we know last year you had to toe the party line and cut some of those very projects.
What I look at is if there is something good happening, I give support to it. If I see that it is going to be dangerous later on, I'm very cautious.
So what happens in the context of contradiction in terms of your party deciding that a vote of no is required, but you believe in representing your area and your constituency, it is good for your constituency? I would imagine that's a conscience matter.
While I agree, there are certain things. Take, for example, the power. I was not able to elaborate more on the power. We've just had 2 brand new machines which are not adequate enough.
As a latent power plant?
Yes, and there is nothing to show us in the budget that power would be concentrated on. Tell us about Mokomoko, the rehabilitation of Mokomoko, the development of the Napi area for more power. Tell us about wind power. Tell us about more solar power that is relevant to our community.
Most
and
certainly, MP, when the presentation on energy comes up, we'll be sure to raise those issues of concern to you. We want to thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Minister and MP Alcock. Thank you very much. We want to get back to the chambers now to ensure that we are providing clear indications to our viewers of what is transpiring even as we present this live program to you. Developments in the National Assembly this afternoon. MP, Honorable Minister of Education, Priya Manik Chan, was slated to present, and even though the Speaker had ruled that he was lifting the ban against her presenting in Parliament during these budget presentations because of an interpretation of some comments that she made during some light heckling.
I think it is the second day of the budget presentations.
But he did come back yesterday and indicated that he was lifting the ban because in reviewing the records, he may have overreacted in terms of what was stated by the minister. Nevertheless, when Minister rose to make her presentation this afternoon, the combined opposition began banging on the desks as a sign of protest against a presentation from the Honorable Minister. The Speaker at that time, who was sitting in, the Deputy Speaker, MP Bassel Williams, sitting in for the substantive Speaker, was forced to suspend the sitting to confer with the chief whips as to the way forward given the protest. Any new developments, Niaz? You were seeing all the drama in the corridors?
From what I'm told, that the government MPs are meeting, and I would want to assume it's probably the same on the other side as they try to see how this can be resolved. We've heard the bell rang twice, so we are that's an indication that for them to go in. So we can only hope that that will be a very short wait. As we can see, that's a live shot.
The government member of parliament making their way into the National Assembly. I think earlier the discourse between the Honorable Leslie Ramsamy and Sidney Alicock, I think Guyanese are looking forward to more of those, where the politicians can come together and to work amicably to develop our beautiful Guyana, to sustain that economic development. And it would be the time when Guyanese, when we go to the next poll, Guyanese will make their decision. But all we're asking parliamentarians to do is to work together to move our country
I want
forward.
to make this point, sorry, that since we started this live program on Monday evening, we've been approaching members of the opposition to come and participate in the program. And we have had Mr. Alicock this evening agreeing to come on his own free will. We have had Mr. Trevor Williams from the AFC. Last evening, we had extended an invitation to Dr. Karen Cummins because she made her first presentation in the House. And during the course of the week, we approached many members of the opposition. But of course, because of various circumstances, some were not able to participate, whether they were in the chambers or they probably feel that they should not participate. But we did make the approach to them.
It was very disheartening, though, Niaz, that while we were having the discourse with MP Alicock and Minister Ramsamy, the chief whip of APNU, Amna Ali, could be heard way up there from the corridor shouting out to Mr. Alicock, even while he was on air live, to persuade him not to continue to make his contributions here. I find it rather interesting that this position is being taken, given the fact that we have been making every effort to include members of the opposition in these discussions.
More so, the PR officer for APNU came down and was standing right next to us from where we are here and was basically insisting that Mr. Alicock should not have been there because we did not go through certain protocols. So my thing is that these are members of parliament. These are adults. We live in a free society. And we approach them, so they have a right to say yes or to say no. And clearly...
and the contention for a while has been...
It's time for us to go to the chambers.
We would want to tune in live to hear what the Speaker has to say.
I felt compelled to suspend the sitting for a few minutes. One, to see if the calm would... The few minutes would bring a period of calm and perhaps we could be able to resume. But also the opportunity was taken to meet with the whips and the clerk to see if the issues that were affecting one side of the House could be known, and if known, dealt with. At the end of which it was reported to me by the opposition chief whip and confirmed by the government's chief whip that there has been no narrowing of the issue. I believe that we know what the issue is. I myself had believed that it was dealt with. I am aware that this protest is as much against the chair as it is against the minister. And I therefore invite the minister to proceed with her speech.
Thank you, sir. May it please Your Honor. Sir, I wish to join in congratulating Minister Ashley Singh and his staff on a budget that is holistic and comprehensive. Minister Ashley Singh has
Other members, order, please. Order. Order.
Sir, I ask for your protection.
Honourable members, could we have some quiet so that the Honourable Minister may give her presentation, please?
Thank you, sir. I join to congratulate Minister Ashley.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I wish to put a motion on the floor. Mr. Speaker, I wish to put a motion on the floor. Give me the floor. Mr. Speaker,
Honourable members,
I wish to move a motion.
I recognize Mr. Shearer, please.
I wish to move a motion that the speaker be, the minister be allowed to speak, all vote for or against. People have to be able to vote for or against. Mr. Speaker, have you heard me?
Honourable member, I'm unable to hear anything. I'm seeing you, but I can't hear.
Everybody stand up. Everybody stand up.
Where's the motion? Let me shout it out loud. Let me shout it out loud.
Stand. Stand.
Honourable members, honourable members, honourable members, if this continues, because I can't hear anything, I will adjourn the sitting till Monday.
Well, clearly, as we are back live, well, we are live. That was live from the
That's very-
Parliament
very
chambers.
dramatic
We're,
indeed.
we're downstairs.
Honourable
very dramatic.
members,
We certainly want to continue to chip in into Parliament to ensure that we bring to the people what is
Minister, I
happening.
invite you once again to make your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Honourable members, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm adjourning the sitting of the National Assembly until Monday. What is it, Monday? What date? The sitting is adjourned to Monday the 7th at 2 p.m.
Well, you've heard you've heard that, and as we keep telling you earlier, there was this protest action that continued. They suspended for quite a while. There was a meeting, and one would have thought that from the meeting that the minister would have been able to continue her presentation. But I think all Guyana there basically saw what just transpired.
I don't know what in what we just experienced suggests that it will be any different on Monday when the National Assembly resumes. The joint opposition is clearly bent on not allowing or not acquiescing to the Speaker's ruling that the Honorable Minister of Education be allowed to make her presentation. I am not certain whether this will change on Monday, but then we have a whole weekend ahead of us. We will have to see what develops.
But I want to point out one of the things that the Speaker said, because he ruled on this issue concerning the Honorable Minister
And
of Education.
we were trying to see if we can get
We're trying to
the
see
chief
now
whip
we see the
of the
members
government or the opposition to come join us.
We
Yeah,
now
but coming
see
back,
the,
coming back to what I was saying, what the speaker said, he ruled on this issue, and basically after reviewing the tapes and what was said and so on, and he said that he ruled. So basically, the protest, as he mentioned, is not just only against the
It's against him as
the Minister of
Speaker
Education, but
and
him
his
too.
decision
Exactly.
to allow the ministers to speak.
So I don't know the protocols in Parliament, but one would expect that the Speaker's ruling and so on
Would be respected.
Would be respected.
I think if we go back to the rulings and the operations of Parliament, we must remind our public that Parliament is governed by standing orders. And it is the Speaker who would ensure the dispensation of these standing orders. And we would have seen tonight how we saw an extraordinary development, and I believe
Training these health sector professionals for exports? Life Empowerment Consort, Vaughan Brownie, fundamentally establishes a message of hope for the conception of a dreamer's integral aspirations and fulfillment of life. This cosmopolitan servitor brings personal empowerment for purposed accomplishments to all humanity for the significance of their destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Word Power Experience. Well, I have been given a theocratic assignment entitled Free Dominion for this season. How God anointed and consecrated Jesus, Acts 10:38 declares, of Nazareth, with his Holy Spirit. In other words, with strength and ability and power. Strength, ability, and power, who went about doing good. What was his mandate? Curing all who were harassed and oppressed of demonic strongholds and spirits, those that were bound by every tormenting force in a world in which we live today. For many of you, it is spiritual. For many of you, you're bound economically. For many of you, you're bound physically. I wrote this word wisdom as I received it in his presence, writing this book entitled Free Dominion. I want you to hear this word wisdom. It is entitled, Change is Eminent when the personification of favor is recognized. Change is eminent when the personification of what? Favor is recognized. This is the existence of an omniscient intention being revealed before its infinite fullness of time. It's amazing that when something is revealed divinely to your soul, it is another form of God himself sharing his secret or his secrets with you because of a mandate he's preparing you for. The attribution of a personal nature is the regard of something being caused by someone or something for an assigned time. The principle, in other words, of divine pleasure accomplishes the personification of favor for your holistic pleasure. In other words, let me say it like this. It pleases God to please you. It pleases God to heal you. It pleases God to satisfy you. It pleases God to reform you and I. It pleases God to restore us and to complete us for the purpose of sovereign dominion, so that we're able to become channels of freedom to others. This nation must experience free dominion in this hour. You, as an individual, must understand there's a time appointed. It is called Kairos. Kairos season is an opportune time of favor. How else can I say this? Your time of favor has been privileged. It is now revealed.
Stand by. Welcome back, and we are live again from the National Assembly. And as you can see with me here joining us, the members of the government side. They've come down. The speaker has just adjourned the sitting until Monday because of the protest not allowing Minister Manik Chan to speak. I'm going to go and we're going to chit-chat with most of them, starting off with government's Chief Whip, Ms. Gail Teixeira. Ms. Teixeira, what we saw clearly from our standpoint, disrespect not only to the Honorable Minister, but also to the ruling by the Honorable Speaker.
The opposition tonight defied the Speaker in his ruling that he gave 2 days ago. I think the public needs to know that after or during the time when Mrs. Balder-Lawrence was speaking, there was an issue that was raised, and on the following day, there was a meeting with Mr. Harman, myself, Minister Priya Manik-Chan, and the Speaker, at which we agreed to certain words being used in the House. Minister Manik-Chan repeated exactly what those words were in keeping with the agreement, and the Speaker ruled that Minister Manik-Chan could speak. Apparently, APNU, to try to protect themselves and to save face with the departure of Mr. Jaipal Sharma and the support of CN Sharma and his television station to the APNU, that they're now trying to use Minister Manik-Chan and the government as their whipping boy. So that tonight what we saw was that the opposition refused by banging their tables to prevent the minister, who has a very sizable and significant budget as well as a very important sector, prevent her from speaking. The speaker then called Mrs. Alien, myself, and the clerk to try to reach agreement. He wanted to find words that would be acceptable. Ms. Amna Ali made it very clear that Ms. Priya Manik-Chan must apologize. We said no, this matter had been completed and we would not apologize. So we went back in the House and we disrupted the House. The Speaker was forced to suspend the sitting for Monday. This is the behavior of the opposition throughout this budget debate and even before. The life of this whole Parliament, the 10th Parliament, has been one of bullyism by the opposition in preventing the smooth running of this House and the passage in particular of the budget 2014. So I believe that we can see clearly that the opposition wants always their way. There is no opportunity to reach agreement, and even when you do agreement, the opposition always reneges on whatever they agree with you. Mr. Harman, I understand, is now turning coat on what he agreed to in the meeting with the Speaker and myself and Minister Manik-Chan. And the public needs to know this is the kind of politicians in the opposition that we have to confront in this Parliament.
What happens if the same thing happens on Monday?
We will take each day at its time. But we believe the matter has been concluded. It was addressed by the Speaker. We kept to our agreement. The Minister kept to our agreement. And we are keeping to that point.
And we have other members of Parliament. Minister Manik-Chan, let me bring you in here because clearly you, if I can use the term, you're the center of the discourse at this point in time. And basically, as the Chief Whip mentioned...
I think that's rather unfortunate. Look, heckles happen all the time in every Parliament. This one is no different. Our Parliament has been known for heckles. So I could not have expected that one line with maybe 7 words would attract so much attention from anyone. Having said that, on the day that the heckle was made, I was asked to withdraw and apologize. And I stood up and said very clearly that I was not speaking or referring to Jaipal Sharma. I think I said, I would say without reservation, that I was not referring to any member of the House. Now let's take this step by step. This is me saying something that is of national importance to this whole country. So it's a justified comment, heckle. If you listen to the tape and the video and the recording of that day's activity, you won't even really hear me. So this is something that happens all the time. Heckles pass all the time from the opposition to us. And it's never met with this kind of reaction. I am shocked that the opposition would try to shut down my right to represent the people of this country by trying to gag me. I am stunned that they would renege on their agreement that first of all, I was not referring to Sharma. Secondly, I said very clearly, I said very publicly that I did not intend to disrupt the House or to offend His Honor, the Speaker. I mean, this is just really getting out of hand, not from our part. So I think we should invite the public to examine why it is the opposition is now behaving this way. Because 2 days ago, they were fine with what I said. They were okay with the apology or the statement I made. We had agreed on that statement. And now they're saying they're not. But what happened between then and now? Jaipal Sharma resigned, and they have problems with that. And so I think, like Mr. Shearer said, this is really an attempt to save face. It's an attempt to keep happy and nice with Mr. Sharma and his TV station and so on, and all the other things that they have going there. And that's it's unfortunate that one heckle, which is done every day by everyone in every parliament all over the world, not even a rowdy heckle, was made into an issue like this and is being made into an issue like this. This is just another attempt to shut us down, really.
If I can bring in the Honorable Prime Minister here, sir, what message you think is being sent by this kind of action to Guyanese who looked at all of this live?
Well, I was astonished that this matter was raised again today. As far as I went and others, it was settled on Wednesday when Minister Priya
Leslie Ramsamy and opposition member Mr. Sidney Alicock on the same program talking at the same time. And then after that, we saw what happened just now in the National Assembly.
Yes, and I think the opposition, their word is not their bond. They want things their way. I think they have the majority and therefore they should have things their way. But when agreements are reached, one has to stay with the agreement. Much has been made that they were ready to prepare and negotiate with the government in the preparation of the budget, but we've had the example of the 2012 budget when we made agreements, and when we delivered on our agreement, on the next day they reneged when they were to put our agreement in place. And I'm speaking about the reform of the electricity, the provision of electricity in Linden. And so I'm quite disappointed. I'm very disappointed in the opposition, and I think all our people should take note of that. The word is not their bond.
And Dr. Ashley is saying when you crafted this budget, the largest in our nation's history, clearly this wasn't something I think viewers would have anticipated.
Absolutely not, Niaz. Let me say, first of all, it mustn't be forgotten that Minister Manik-Chan is responsible for the sector that has the largest single sectoral allocation in the national budget. That is the education sector, obviously. Secondly, it's a sector that touches the lives and well-being of literally every Guyanese person, even if you don't have a child in the education system. Because if I might be forgiven for using a cliche, the children of today are literally the future of our country. And ensuring that we have a well-educated population is literally the single most important thing that we can do to secure the future of our country. So there's that dimension to it, the importance of the sector, the importance of the responsibilities that Minister Manik-Chan has, and the fact that she's being prevented from discharging those responsibilities in the National Assembly. So there's that dimension. Let me say, on top of that, that there are a few very clear messages. You asked just now, what can we take away from this? What messages can we take away from this? First of all, I would say definitively that this displays to the people of Guyana that this is an opposition that cannot be trusted. There was an agreement to which the opposition was party. Minister Manik-Chan complied with that agreement and repeated the words that were agreed, I think, on Wednesday's sitting, in keeping with the agreement. So we honored, through Minister Manik-Chan, the government honored our side of the agreement. The opposition did not object to what she said on Wednesday, did not object on Thursday, but on Friday, subsequent events having unfolded, have suddenly reneged, backpedaled, done an about turn, however you might wish to describe it. So I would say the clear message there is an opposition on display, an opposition that cannot be trusted. Thirdly, we've said time and time again, this is an opposition that has no respect for the rule of law, no respect for authority. And we've seen many examples of this. This is just the latest example. This agreement wasn't plucked out of thin air. It was brokered by the Speaker, who was perhaps, in a manner of speaking, a party to the agreement. He facilitated the agreement. It was under his charge that Minister Manik-Chan said the words that she said on Wednesday, discharging our obligations under the agreement. It was his ruling that Minister Manik-Chan be permitted to speak, and it is his authority that is now being disrespected and flouted by the opposition. Yet another example of an opposition that has no respect for the rule of law, no respect for authority, no respect for the norms and traditions and customs and regulations that govern the operation of our parliament. And finally, I would say it's just outrage, it's just downright lawless behavior.
And clearly, sorry.
If you saw the behavior in Parliament, to try to shout out, to try to bully a properly elected member of Parliament from speaking is just downright bullyism and lawlessness.
And clearly such actions would have implications or could have implications for the country as a whole.
Absolutely. It's not the 26, it's not the 26 APNU members of Parliament that put Minister Manik-Chan here. It's thousands of Guyanese people who placed her here. She represents those people. And 26 persons cannot deny Minister Manik-Chan the right to represent the thousands of persons who elected her to sit in this National Assembly. And so it's downright, it's disrespect for the principles of democracy. She is a lawfully, democratically elected member of Parliament. They want to deny her an opportunity to represent the people who put her in this Parliament.
And if I can bring back in the Chief Whip, clearly this wasn't the only incident that happened during the course of the afternoon. There was a reason for another suspension earlier in the day.
Yes, of course. What we're seeing in the Parliament is that when the opposition says things which are accusing or making comments about our people, and we've heard it throughout, who put money where, who took money where, all sorts of things, and you get up and challenge it, it's not heard. Or in the case of tonight when Mr. Morian made comments about ministers and we tried to have it dealt with, Mr. Williams was in the chair, the deputy speaker was in the chair and prevented and said no such things can be, no questions like that he will entertain. Yet when Mr. Odunga Lumumba was speaking and made a reference to Mr. Granger, it became, as you know, a big issue with suspension and so forth. And luckily the speaker hadn't left the house, so that the speaker eventually took on the chair and so on. But this is what's constantly, as we get closer down the road of the budget, as we come closer to the end, as we're coming to the estimates, you will see the temperature raising, because the issues we have been arguing in the House, and I believe the government, every single government minister and member of Parliament has been making excellent points. The points being made in the opposition are vacuous, they're empty. People talking about 20 rolls of toilet paper in a hospital, that cannot be for the budget debate. Someone talking about, the level of debate is disgraceful. And so I am very proud as the Chief Whip of all the government MPs. They've spoke very, very well, and we're coming down in the last 2 days. Their list is running out. We still have our heavy guns coming in. You know, so I am very confident that the press and the people are listening to the debate, and I have my faith in the Guyanese public that they are seeing what is going on, they're listening, and they are getting very clear messages on the behavior of this opposition. So whatever happens with the budget, our people will be all the wiser, because they will be based on the, what you call, people being able to see it all the time. Live, is that what it is? Live broadcasting, that our people will be much wiser on what are the kind of issues going on in this House. But the level of debate has been very, very poor on the level of the opposition. Extremely poor.
I know you guys have been working hard over the last few days, but before you go, among the many things that were discussed in this budget, clearly was investment, having investors come here to help develop our country. And clearly, what is happening here, what happened here this evening, will continue to be able to detract investors from coming. So when I asked Dr. Singh earlier the implications that things like this could have for the future, clearly that's one area that could be affected.
Yes, in fact, I'm very disappointed, I'm saddened, but I'm also frightened, because these people present themselves as the shadow government. And not only for the investors, but the ordinary Guyanese people watching on must be asking themselves, are these the people who will be our government? And I think I've always said that we present stark differences to our people. We present ourselves as much as dignified, presenting our programs, etc. They come here, they find nothing good in this country, but they also present an image that cannot be good for Guyana. This is a party and politicians who have legacies. Cherry Jagan was gagged in our parliament. I know I'm one who experienced it. You all will remember during that 2001-2006 parliament when they tried to gag me. Minister Rohi they attempted to gag him. Now they're trying to gag Minister Manikchan, who not only speaks for thousands of people who voted us in here, she speaks on behalf of more than 180,000 children and their families. That's what she's standing up to talk about. Talk about our vision for the future. Talk about how we are going to ensure we consolidate with our children, topping the Caribbean in the future more and more and more. And you want to gag her? But my last point on this is that when Minister Manikchan made her comments, heckling that she says, and we all know, is a normal thing in our parliament, she was actually drawing attention to a very important issue that Mrs. Balder Lawrence raised, which was about our children being sexually abused, being raped, being the violence in families and so on. That's what she was addressing. Forget about the name of a person. It's a very important issue, and in this country, too many men who rape young girls are not being charged, and when they are charged, they are not being brought to justice. They get sick, they leave the country, they do all kinds of things, and we have to be quiet. In Parliament and out of Parliament, we in the PPPC will continue to highlight these issues. And if that's a reason for them to try to gag us, then we will go to the people. Let the people judge and let the people make up their minds. The truth is, a party with a legacy of dictatorship and authoritarian behavior is demonstrating every day in our Parliament that inclination, that character is still deeply rooted in that party. And the people of this country must never, ever again squander our freedom to live, our freedom to speak, our freedom to develop our country. We must never, ever squander that. The PNC, the APNU, and so on. I must say something about the AFC. They are spineless, a spineless set of people who allow things like this to happen, and they go to our people and say, put us there, we will defend your right. Well, if they can't defend the right of one very proud Guyanese woman, can they defend the rights of the people of this country? I call on Mr. Ramjitan and Mr. Nagamutu, their spineless self, to come here and defend the right of every member of parliament to speak.
Well, let me bring in here the Honorable Dr. Jennifer Westford. I just want to raise a point again, maybe some red herrings by the opposition.
Yes, Niaz. Niaz, again, this is another, as everyone has said, it's another attempt of the opposition at trying to disrupt the smooth running of this country. This is not only about the budget. This is bigger than the budget. They are trying at all costs. They don't want this budget to be read. This budget has so many good things in it that they're embarrassed. There is nothing bad they can say about the budget. So they're embarrassed that if it goes through and they said they're going to cut, it puts them in bad light. Because if they cut the good things, there's so many good things for the poor people of this country. If they cut that, they've run afoul of what people think of them. So that's the big thing. So every little thing they're trying to jump at. It is Minister Manikchan now, earlier in the evening, as you well know, it was Mr. Odinga Lovumba they were trying with. That is when Mr. Basil Williams was trying to disrupt the parliament. Fortunately, the speaker came back. And there it is, against the speaker's wishes, against his advice, they have continued. It's blatant disrespect for the speaker. And again, I am also dissatisfied about the actions of the speaker. Our standing orders dictate actions that he could have taken, other than suspending parliament. But it seems as though his hands are tied, that he cannot take the rightful, because if, I am sure, were it the government side that was behaving like this, we might have been asked to leave the house.
And if I can bring in here the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, based on what was said, can I invite you forward, ma'am? Based on what was said, as Minister Westford just said, they don't want this budget at a time when Guyana's international image has been restored and we are now respected across the globe.
I think that is very clear. At the beginning of the budget, I think, the budget debates, I think they came here with the intention that they're going to destroy the budget. And I think that the budget is one that is very comprehensive. It caters for the short term, the long term, the immediate term. And in fact, I think Minister Manikchan's ministry, the Ministry of Education, has the largest allocation, and that would make a significant difference, especially the allowance to the school children, but all the other things, the books, in many of the communities, people would like to see their schools improved, and the budget caters for a lot of that this year. In fact, only earlier today I was telling Minister Ashley Singh that I've been here for about 12 budgets, and this one I think is one of the best budgets ever. and they know that we're going to win this argument. If you look at the budget, for example, apart from the immediate things, like I said, in that budget, there's provision for the work we have to do on our side of the border for the quarantine bridge. That's a major project that that would link Guyana and Suriname. There's the feasibility study for a major hydro in the middle and upper Mazaruni. These are the larger things, but the immediate things to deal with education, to deal with health, to deal with Amerindian communities, these are all very positive things. And the sooner we get through this, I think it would be better for the Guyanese people. And so these kinds of distractions that the opposition, is bringing into this, it's not very good. But I just want to say that, Minister Manik-Chan, it's one of our cabinet members that has been involved in the fight for children, for the protection of children. And it has to be very difficult sometimes to have to deal with these things. In my time dealing with Amerindian affairs, I've had my own run-ins on issues of trying to protect people. And so it would be very difficult for Minister Manik-Chan to sit there even in the parliament and hear people talk about issues such as rape, and not say something about it, even though it was certainly not directed to any member in the National Assembly. And so I stand in solidarity with my colleague on this matter and hope that she would be able to make her presentation. And everyone looks forward to Minister Manik-Chan's presentation, and I'm looking forward to it. Whether she's able to do it in the parliament or anywhere else, it will be done.
Would you say then that the actions of the opposition is in some way sending a message that they're not too concerned about the welfare of children?
Well, I don't think that they're concerned with the welfare of all Guyanese, because our children are certainly very, very important. Our elderly, are very important. But all our Guyanese people are important. And these are not the days when you had to wake up in the morning to listen to the budget and be scared. People now want the budget, the estimates to be completed so that we can start with the program, and that's what we want to do.
We are still live here from the National Assembly. We're going to talk to a few more government members of parliament, and then we're going to wrap things up. I have here a regional member of parliament, Mr. Damon. Of course, you had a very, very illustrious presentation in the National Assembly, but your thoughts on what happened this afternoon?
Okay, thank you. I'm asking myself, apologize for what? The Honorable Minister of Education did not say anything wrong against Sharma in that parliament. The fact remains, my father always tells me that when a tiger is wounded and battered, it will always try to make a last spring, okay? And that is what is happening with the opposition up there. They're battered and beaten, and they don't want to take it, and they must be loyal, and people must be loyal people and understand if the PPP civic member of parliaments are performing better than them, they must accept. Don't try to do what they're doing. It's bad. I'm surprised at Mr. Granger and his people, and especially Mr. Moses Nagamutu and Mr. Ramjatan. They ought not to be doing what they're doing. And I'm saying the peace, progress, and prosperity of this country will continue. No matter what they try to do, it will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can bring in here the Minister within the Ministry of Finance, Bishop Wanejel. And the comment made earlier this afternoon that some minister may have taken some black bag in Linden, and you try to clarify that. Can you expound a bit on that?
Niaz, before I go to the unfortunate statement made by my colleague, Mr. Morian, what happened tonight must be taken in a particular context. The opposition don't want the president to speak to the people of Guyana. They don't want GINA to exist. They want to sanction NCN. They don't mind what the opposition is saying because they have an outfit that carries their message. They don't want, in the parliament, elected members to speak on the floor. Parliament is about speaking. That's what the word parliament means. It's about speech, being able to come to the parliament and speak. But there's something that you must know. When you speak in the parliament, you must speak responsibly. This evening, the distinguished member from Linden, Region 10 MP, Mr. Morian, made a comment in his presentation that some minister went to Linden with some black bag and left it that they must share out what is in the bag when he's gone. All we sought to do was to clarify, name the minister. If you're going to speak, you must speak responsibly. And when challenged, you must be able to provide the answer. We saw what happened with the person who was in the chair, the deputy speaker. And it is clear that if the opposition could get me to shut my mouth, because when I stand up to speak, you would have been there, you heard it. They sang, they used racial slurs, they used religious language, all to distract me while I'm speaking so that the people would not hear what I have to say. I totally ignored them. But the ultimate thing is they don't want the message of the people, of the PPPC to get to the people. They don't mind the fabrications, the innuendos, the lies, the accusations, but the moment you stand in a responsible manner to address these concerns and to address these issues, they have to label it all kinds of things. So I think what we are fighting here for, and the people of Guyana, to start speaking, I mean, you've spoken to the members of parliament and Minister Manichan. I would want to hear what the people of Guyana would have to say about an opposition APNU not wanting, number one, the elected executive president of this country to speak because it's outlet. If nobody goes to the press conference, the Government Information Service and NCN must be able to communicate to the people what the president is saying. If they don't want the president to speak, then they didn't want Minister Rohi to speak. Now they don't want Minister Manichan to speak. Tonight they didn't want Mr. Lumumba to speak. When other speakers stand up to speak, they're seeking to ensure that they're not heard or they're distracted. But you know what? They're afraid, like my good friend Mr. Damon said. The message that is getting out to the people of Guyana, that the opposition believes in the politics of bullyism. And I have no apology to make for that. Every one of them participated. The members of the APNU, they believe in the politics of bullyism. And I've said it before, they believe in this approach of might is right. And we have to be able to bring an end to that. We have to be able to stop that. And it's the people out there, the people of Guyana, would have to pronounce on this particular matter.
Thank you very much. We're going to extend our broadcast for just a few minutes more. I can invite Minister of Housing and Water, Mr. Irfan Ali, to join us for a few minutes here as we continue to be live here from the National Assembly. If you're just joining us, the Speaker adjourned the sitting until Monday because of protest action by the opposition members of Parliament in trying to prevent Minister of Education, the Honorable Priya Manik-Chan, to speak. Having said all of what I just said, Minister Ali, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are very simple. The opposition may not like it, but we live in a democracy. We live in a democracy which enables all of us as citizens of this country to freely express our views and our opinions. Now, let us backpedal a bit. Every sitting of the National Assembly, there are tons of insults, tons of names that are thrown at the government in the media. Even on the very television station, there are tons of insult that comes the government way every day. In the spirit of democracy, in the spirit of freedom of expression, we have never sought to silence any of those that throw insult at us. The Minister of Education did not even went to that extent in insulting anyone. The Minister of Education has a democratic right to represent the sector she's minister for, and has a democratic right to speak on a very important issue like the national budget. And in my opinion, no amount of pounding on a desk, loud, abusive, naked, vulgar behavior should be allowed and entertained in stopping the minister from making her presentation. It will be very interesting to see how the speaker would contemplate carrying out his duties, even on Monday, because I cannot foresee an event where the minister would disallow herself from speaking because of persons who believe that they're above the realm of democracy, who believe with the use of force, with the show of vulgarity that they demonstrated, they can silence a minister. That must not be allowed to carry on. The Bishop Edgell undergo tremendous abuse every time he gets up to speak in the National Assembly. This is a man of high moral integrity. He represents a church, and the type of singing, I know in the Bible it says you must not call the Lord's name in vain, but a lot of it is being done in a disparaging way to the bishop, and many persons in the gallery would see this, and I think this needs to come to an end. This type of lawlessness that the opposition believes they can bully and pull the government into, every time they find themselves in a corner, they resort to this behavior. We cannot allow this to continue. And I will be standing with my colleague, the Honorable Priyamani Chan, strongly. I will be standing with her, and I'll do everything that my party and my conscience allow me to do to protect her democratic right to speak in the National Assembly and anywhere in representing her interests and this nation's interests.
Thank you very much, Minister. But I want to re-invite Minister Manik-Chan for the final word before we wrap the program up. I want to have the final word with you, Minister Manik-Chan. My colleagues, Dario and Indira, I'm sure are still around. Final question, basically. You represent children. I'm told 180,000 children across this country. The kind of example that is being set by the behavior we saw in Parliament this evening to children, clearly not a very good one, I believe.
But parliaments do things that may not be acceptable outside of Parliament. So heckles might not be understood by the population. Behavior that is normal for Parliament, inside Parliament, may not be understood by the opposition. But look, at the end of the day, this is a matter that was resolved finally with the Speaker giving a ruling that says, I have reviewed this matter. I have listened to the Minister. I have listened to what happened on the floor, and I am ruling that the Honourable Minister will not be hindered in making her presentation if she so desires. And I want to make that presentation. We have $10,000 for every child in this country. We have to make sure our budget passes so that all our children from nursery to second grade could get a meal every day. We need to get those uniforms, the grants out so the children can buy their uniforms. We need to rebuild schools. Take Zeeburg. Zeeburg is falling down. The people at Zeeburg need a new secondary school. St. John's, the children there, they're out of the school because it's collapsed because of structural problems. It's very old, and they're in a community center. We need to put those kids in a school. Myconi, secondary needs to be expanded so the kids can fit. These are the things the budget 2014 are going to do. We have money in the budget to make sure all the furniture needs are met. So, that's always a complaint, that there's not enough furniture in the classroom. Teachers are not getting enough. We've written our own readers. We've written our own nursery texts. We need this money to be able to do these things to help develop Guyana. So it's not only Guyana's children that are being affected by this, which is really unfortunate. People always say, look, whenever something bad happens, a natural disaster, and the PNC is always like a natural disaster, and the APNU, and now they're joined with the AFC, the most vulnerable in a country always suffer the most, and that's old people, babies, children, and we're seeing it again here. But more than that, education, while immediately it addresses the needs of children who are in the system, it really tells us how we will look 20 years down the line, how we will look as a country. And if you look at our stats, in 1992, 5% of the budget was allocated to education. In 2013, it was 15%. So we really take education, preparing our children now and preparing them for the future. The PPP Civic takes that very, very seriously. And what we want to do is make sure we can make improvements in the lives of our people, not only today, but in the coming years, because we've educated them and prepared them for that. And so it is very important that we get to present our budget and pass the budget. And I think that's really, but that is really what is at issue here, because this matter is resolved. It's concluded. But if they were to let this budget pass, then what happens? Good things happen for Guyana and Guyanese, and then people realize the opposition is obsolete, and that is good for the PPP Civic. And if it's good for the PPP Civic, it's not good for them
All
politically.
right, 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
If I
30 seconds,
if I put my question in context, we're trying to teach children to be respectful, to adhere to laws and rules and everything else. And clearly one of your colleagues said earlier that what happened this evening was clearly a show of disrespect to the ruling of the speakers. In that context, I was talking about the message sent to children.
Heckling is allowed, so I did nothing wrong. So to all the children of Guyana, your
I was speaking about the protest, yeah.
did nothing wrong. But the speaker ruled. And once the speaker rules, it should be complied with. And the opposition failed to do that. So those are people who have no regard for law and order, who have no regard for authority, who have no regard for basic rights. I have a right to speak. I have been elected to speak. And you're taking that away from me without due process. Just because you can, they're bullies. That's the message.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm going to invite my colleagues, Indira and Dario, as we wrap up our session here. Extended session, by the way, because of the events that unfolded during the course of the evening. What time is it, by the way? It's just close to about 9:45, or maybe just around 9:45 here on day 5, Friday, day 5. Kwame is joining us as well, and the extended broadcast, simply because we want to bring what happened here in the National Assembly and put it in context so Guyanese can be able to see what's taking place. Kwame.
Well, thank you very much, Niaz, and thanks for have me join your program. I think what is playing out here, we saw the disruption by the opposition in the budget debate. I think one can look at different scenarios. I believe that with the resignation of Jaipal Sharma, which was brewing for some while, apparently within the Partnership for National Unity, because there is word out there that Mr. Sharma has been kind of being tailored and circumscribed, restricted in some ways, even for his 2014 budget presentation. And so the APNU camp and the partnership has had some issues that they've been sorting out. So the surprise of Jaipal Sharma is really no surprise at all. The resignation of Jaipal Sharma is really no surprise at all. I think they were just waiting, and Sharma and the others were just waiting for the right moment to exit. And I think it is very clear, given the way it occurred for the last 2 days and for today in particularly in the National Assembly. I think that it is clear also that, and many people out there are talking about the possibility of the opposition using this occasion. So it could have been any other member of government heckling or making any other statement that they would attempt to disrupt the National Assembly, because for them, if they could not have the budget 2014, the National Assembly, and delayed further, because you know they are constitutional deadlines for the passage of the budget. So they are seeking to employ all sorts of tactics to delay the passage of the budget, and indeed we continue to see the antics of the opposition that puts our country in such disrepute, and of course the image of Guyana goes overseas and elsewhere as one where the opposition continues to be the stumbling block.
That's all the time we have, but before we close, a few seconds from my colleagues. Indira?
Only as we all know what transpired this evening, but we are very optimistic that both the government and opposition would listen to the voices of all Guyanese and come to a compromise to move the country forward. Our constitution stipulates the timeline for the passing of the national budget. If our budget is not passed, it has detrimental effects on our economic and social development. We do not want to put our country backward. We want to continue the momentum of growth and progress. And every Guyanese, I believe, would like to see this happen. And like everyone, we are all calling for compromise and good spirit to prevail in the interest of the voters who have elected each and every representative in the National Assembly?
Dario?
Clearly calculated moves. It's not surprising at all. The 3 consecutive years of disruption in the progress of the country, economic progress and other progress. Surely, this has got to be resolved one way or the other. I do not believe Guyanese are prepared for us to continue maybe beyond this year or into another year. For the rest of the tenure of the PPP Civic in this kind of acrimony. Ghana cannot afford it. I certainly, for one, as a citizen, I'm tired of it, and I would like to see us move forward one way or the other.
And just to recap, the day 5 of the 2014 budget debate was cut short. It was adjourned because of protest action in the House by the APNU members to prevent Minister Manik Chan from speaking. The Speaker adjourned the sitting to Monday. So let's see what happens on Monday when day 6 of the budget debates will resume. On behalf of Dario, Indira Kwame, Nia Saban, thank you for watching.
Don't we have